G'day, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to night 2 of the Whisky Forum 2021. And just like the numbers on a single cask of independently bottled whiskey, they don't really mean anything. Night 1, night 2, night 3, just like bottle 1, bottle 2, bottle 3. They all came from the same place. But my name is Scott Fitzsimons, looking after all the whiskey and spirits here at the Oak Barrel. And it's my great pleasure to reintroduce a number of legends from the Scotch independent bottling and wider whiskey industry back into the Oak Barrel Forum discussion for another night. This is something that I wanted to do last year, and we did last year. That was a really interesting insight into the bottles of whiskey that we see and we drink in Australia that don't necessarily come from a distillery direct, and therefore don't come with the story and the marketing around those distilleries. But there's lots of decisions made. There's a whole sort of industry out there, an industry that's been through a number of challenges. So we're going to pick up that discussion that we had, re-look at some of those questions, and then have a bit of a chat about some new ones as well. So I'd like to welcome onto the stream and back to the Oak Barrel virtually. I don't think anyone's actually been stepped foot physically into the Oak Barrel, although their bottles have, and they've got close a couple of times. But Kira from North Star, Eamon from Rest and Be Thankful, Alistair from Infrequent Flyers, and Dave from Boutique Whiskies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning. Good evening.
Yes, and I should say thank you, everyone, for waking up nice and early. Again, this is another one that the first week is sort of internationals. The second week is more Australians, because we thought we were going to have all the Australians in town. But this is another one where it's 7:30 our time, so we're ready to drink and party because we've got no pubs and clubs to go to, and you guys have a whole a day's worth of meetings to go to just after this. So yes, sorry. Thank you, Dave. A festive sound if ever I heard it. This is not, for those watching, this is not something that we send out packs or tell you what you want to drink. This is something, just grab a dram, ask some questions in the chat, and we'll go through it. And I'm going to kick off by pouring something that I had lying around. A little bit of an older release, I think. This is Rest and Be Thankful, Craig Gallagher, 2007. Yeah. That doesn't have a huge amount left in it, but I thought I tripped over it last night actually and thought that was it. So I guess the first question is probably the simplest one and the most obvious one, and I'm going to throw this, whoever's loudest and quickest can pick this one up. This time last year when we were speaking, you guys were still in lockdown. You're now out. Australia's, or at least on the East Coast, we've gone back into lockdown, but we were sort of waiting to see what the industry would look like and react, because whiskey takes time to move. So, I mean, how has the last 12 months been for business in general? Has it been optimistic, or has it been a little bit tough?
Ali, you go.
It's been pretty good, I think. Obviously, there was, when this all started, there was a lot of uncertainty, but I think the whiskey industry settled down. It's a pretty robust industry. I think we're lucky in that a lot of the ways that we sell our product and get it to market, we're allowed to continue. If you look at the UK, shops that sell booze never closed. For whatever reason, alcohol was classed as an essential item. You can take issue with that if you wish. But yeah, we kept going. And I think, it's been pretty, business has been good. I don't know what the other guys think, but things have been pretty okay for the last 12 months.
Yeah, business has been pretty good. Sorry, Carl.
No, I was just going to say the same. Yeah, I can only speak for ourselves, but 2020 was our busiest year so far, and 2021 has proven to be even more so. I think that if you have been proactive and you've been able to adapt to the change in our industry, then I think that you've been able to embrace the growth that Alistair mentioned. I think what we all sell and what we all do is a luxury product, and a lot of people were able to enjoy that in the comfort of their own home, and we don't directly deal massively with on trade, so we were really able to benefit from a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people having a bit more disposable income and wanting to enjoy a luxury product at home. And actually, I think we touched on this last year. I'm able to sit here in Glasgow doing this online, which wasn't something that we did before. And actually, I don't know why, because it works really well, especially from Glasgow to Australia. So I think that we've been able to engage with a whole different market online that we didn't take advantage of before.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Certainly doing this online, and a mixture of online. We did our first live tasting last week. We introduced a new boutique series, which is coming at the end of this month, but we did it half live and half virtual with people up and down the country. It's hard work when you've got a room that starts rolling, you know, when you're standing in a room and the room starts rolling in itself, you know, as the side conversation. So actually doing the split, I know we've done that with you, Scotty, a little while ago in the Oak Barrel where we did half live, but yeah, when you're managing it yourself as well as presenting, and yeah, it was hard work, especially when the room takes over, but an awful lot of fun, and it was wonderful to be out there and hugging people again. That was the best thing. And like I was just saying earlier, I was down in town yesterday, down in London, with a bag full of whiskey, walking around, which is always fun to do when you've got a suitcase of whiskey and you walk into a bar and they say, "Oh, Dave, lovely to see you. Do you want a drink? Actually, I've got something to show you, and let's go through this," and just do little impromptus. It's just wonderful to be out there again, I must admit.
Yeah. And we launched during the pandemic, Waterford, the distillery in Ireland. And again, you know, the reception was fantastic because people are sat there at home. They've got more disposable income. They've got more time to engage in the product. So it's been great. And I think one thing that I've really missed out on is I go on my kind of random trips up to Scotland and see everybody and see the guys at the big distilleries and see the brokers as we try and do deals. And it's all the kind of soft skills, because the things about us is everything's about acquiring the stock in the first place. You know, it's the kind of thing I always remember when my kids did the week in industry with us, and we went round getting drunk with all our suppliers, and they had to do a report for the teacher, like, what did we do in our week in industry? Dad got drunk, you know. But it's all that kind of sourcing stuff and that relationship building that I've certainly missed out on, because we've got to kind of prepare for the future as well in terms of what we're going to bottle down the line. So it's definitely been a weird time. I'm definitely a bit sick of it now. I'm out in France, which has been an absolute pain to get to, but it will be nice. It's a case of be careful what you wish for, but it will be great once we can get out there and engage with the trade again.
Eamon, are you in France now?
Yeah, I'm at Romain's house in France. So as I said, we got two guys based here, but it was a pain to get here.
You just touched on something there that is on my list of things to ask. So let's dive into to some of the serious things. I mean, when we were talking last year, I think there was an element of you guys were not quite sure what was going to happen in terms of, you know, if the bigger multinationals were getting hit pretty hard, whether they were going to tighten up releasing casks or release more casks. And it might just be me, but are you guys on the ground? There seems to be a proliferation of independent bottlers coming out of the woodwork now. I mean, maybe they were already there and we're only just hearing about them. But every week we're tripping over someone. Almost feels like, you know, a bit what you were saying there, Kira, people sitting at home with, you know, money they would normally spend at the bar, not knowing what to do with it. I was like, let's start an independent bottling company. So, I mean, in terms of sourcing casks and actually finding whiskey, has that changed much in the past little while?
I don't think it's got any easier. It's interesting what you're saying, Scott, about the emergence of new independent bottlers. I mean, I was one of those 3 years ago. There has been an explosion, and there seems to be a new bottler every day, and that might suggest to you that there's this abundance of casks out there that's driving that, and it's completely the opposite. All it means is that there's more of us competing for the limited stock that's actually out there. Getting casks is without a doubt the biggest challenge, and I absolutely I'm trying to deter people from doing this. If you want to become an independent bottler, now is not the time.
It's funny you say that, Alistair, because Ian says quite often, if he were to, I mean, just we're a young company as well. We celebrated our 5th birthday this year. But Ian says if he was to start the company now, he probably wouldn't.
Not something else.
Not just because of the pandemic, but I hate to be the one to bring it up, but Brexit, brought a whole load of new challenges and expense as well. So I think when he kind of sits and looks back at what's involved now and what we do, I think that there would be more reasons not to do it than to
Honestly,
do it.
Cara, I think you're so right. And again, when you think of the stuff that we sold, that you think, what was I thinking of? I remember many years ago, I worked for a guy called Vivian Immerman when he owned Wider Mackay. And I was doing all the bulk sales at the time. And he said, literally, I will pay you to stay at home because you cost me more money selling than because you could never buy the stuff again. And when I think of what we've sold and the stuff we've had, if I'd just done nothing for 2 or 3 years, I'd have been the king now. But
and that's like that. That's really fascinating. I've been thinking about that sometimes, even with just in the Australian market stuff.
Yeah.
And the pricing is sort of blown up. Kira, we spoke about this at length when we did a North Star tasting that involved 3 spectacular whiskies from a particularly hyped and deservedly so Campbelltown distillery, and there was a lot of discussion around that. And so I want to bring this in. I know, Dave, with Boutique, you guys do a little bit of holding on to stock and that sort of thing. Between you 4, you have brands and reputations that sing out. People will buy Infrequent Flyers, Rest to Be Thankful, whatever it is, because of the label rather than before they try it. So, I mean, what are the tricks to not get stuck in that fight of overpaying for casks and paying? Well, like, is it laying stock down? Do you trade based on your relationships? So it's like, how are you still sourcing casks when morons like me can come in with way too much money and go, well, I'll pay double just for the sake of having it?
I think laying stock down is quite a big thing, because quite often you might be offered something and you look at it and say, well, if I bottle that today, I'm not going to make any money on it. But if I sit on it for 4 or 5 years, I can turn a profit on it. And that also, I mean, we do a lot of re-racking, and you need time to do that as well. So sometimes buying a cask and knowing that you're not going to do anything with it for a period of time, it gives you the opportunity to go away and do something with it. But I think it's becoming more and more difficult to buy something on a Monday and then look to do something with it in a month's time, because prices are kind of going in this direction. Just
because you mentioned the Springbank trilogy, if I'm allowed to say the distillery name.
I didn't mention that name.
It was a great project, Scott. You know more than anyone that it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster for Ian and I, and it was really fun to do, and it was amazing to be able to bottle those 3 casks. But when we kind of sat back and reflected on the whole thing, we kind of realised that it's not all what we're about. We want to celebrate all types of whiskey, not just Scotch, all types of whiskey. But the most important thing for us is that it speaks to everyone. And the trilogy, the Springbank trilogy, didn't speak to everyone. It spoke to a very, very small percentage of whiskey drinker. And this year we really wanted to reevaluate what we were bottling, and price was a huge factor for us.
Yeah.
So we wanted to celebrate more modestly priced, maybe lesser celebrated distilleries. So that's really what we focused on this year. And we just want to, celebrate a Scotch that's, 40, 50, 60 pounds rather than, 800-900. So it was interesting that you mentioned that, because that is something that we've really focused on this year is price. But, finding casks that are the quality that we want to bottle and celebrate versus the price that you want it to retail for, that's a real mission in itself.
Yeah, look, it's
getting.
It's really. I was actually going to throw to you, Dave, because probably Boutique, I'm going to throw it out there, probably buys more casks than the other 3 bottlers here, just in the scale of what you guys do from the distilleries you do. I mean, but you also don't do everything single cask. Like, how do you manage that?
Well, yeah, Scotch. We've been quite lucky actually. We've got quite a bit of Scotch playing around. That we were putting whiskey. Certainly, boutique releases were coming out thick and fast a little while ago, and not really being shouted about because we were everywhere. We were trying to do too much at one time, so we've refocused, and we started refocusing really before the pandemic and starting to put some series releases and have a thought about what we're doing. We're still releasing Scotch whiskies, but we really wanted to put some thought in some sort of a theme. So we started with a World Series a year ago. We had a very, very successful Australian series a little earlier this year, which we've been working on for a long, long time to bring it all together. And certainly by putting a global launch together. So we've got, this next global launch of Home Nations. So we wanted to put the full English on the label because there's lots of English distilleries around. But there was some, there's some Welsh distilleries, there's some Irish distilleries, and some new Scotch distilleries. So we thought, well, we'll go for the Home Nations, seeing as the Lions were touring. So we've got the Home Nations series coming out right now, and we're looking forward for really well ahead when we've already discussed, tasted, and got ready to bottle the next series, which are coming out later this year before Christmas, and certainly looking forward into 2022 now for putting these series together. At the same time, pulling from our reserves of Scotch whiskies to put in a tasty Scotch whisky package at the same time, and maybe we'll have a full Scottish package coming through as a series, as a focus on a region, on a distillery with different expressions. But the company has grown, certainly since I've been with them, to have this bottling facility in Edinburgh, to have the licenses to be able to re-rack, to finish, with our other brands like Darkness and our Character of Isla series, and certainly part of Atom Group. We've been able to do a lot more interesting stuff rather than just, before boutique was about buying a cask or two, tasting them, adding a bucket of one to another, and that's the one. I'm bunging it out there, basically. I'm bunging far too much out there very, very quickly. We're just bringing that focus back in and holding on to those stocks because, as you say, it's not as easy to get hold of these days.
Yeah. And then one other factor in the market as well is all these investment schemes, if you will. People, all these, how can I say?
Eamon, did you say schemes? Schemes, was that the word?
I was gonna. How can I say? I think philosophically, it's not the business that we're in. How can we say that diplomatically? In terms of we're all about making a profit out of our whiskies, but we buy with knowledge, and what can you say? We accept the risk, but because we're in the industry, I do feel that they are changing the profile, certainly of sourcing whiskey as well. So I think the whole it's just, we said lots more independent bottlers, lots more people buying casks. There's less for us. So we have to think on our feet a little bit. So again, from our point of view, that's why we've almost taken a step back. And we've been laying down stock with people like Inchdenny over the last 4 or 5 years. Because it goes back to that point that Cara said. It's all about being able to offer great whiskies at a good price. We can't always be at that $250 price point. We have to democratize whiskey. When a cask of Springbank or Macallan comes up, absolutely, because that doesn't happen very often. And if we don't bottle it, it'll end up on an auction site somewhere in Bonhams in Hong Kong. So that all makes sense. But I think what we're all trying to do at the moment is trying to think, okay, where is the industry going and how do we react? And really, it's a kind of transformational time for us because it's all about investment right now. It's all about thinking, what can I do now to ensure that 3-4 years down the line, I'm really bottling interesting stuff that might not be from, as Dave said, that might not be from a super duper distillery, but is real quality, has got a real interest to it, whether it's the cask, whether it's the maturation, but something that we can go forward. So yeah, so we have to kind of change and adapt. But it's certainly not an easy time at all.
So, I mean, just approaching that and just like chatting to you guys and listening to you guys now, it looks like you've all got slightly different takes on it. You know, I know, Alistair, you've done a lot of re-racking. You know, Kira, you and Ian do a bit of, you know, re-racking and stuff as well. But what sort of things are you looking for in barrels then, if not to bottle them straight away? That's the obvious question, you know, or the obvious process. Barrel gum comes in, you try it. Great, I love that. Let's bottle it. When that's not the aim, when you're looking 4 or 5 years down the track, what sort of factors are you looking for? And are you buying barrels or are you buying spirit in these points?
Oh, we've been laying down some young spirit.
Yeah. So I think certainly from our point of view, we're investing in wood, we're investing in spirit, we're really investing in, you know, if we can't own a distillery, it's up to us to find people to distill the whiskey that we would like to distill if we owned a distillery. And whether it's peated, unpeated, lots of different interesting casks. That's I think that probably the direction that we're all going in. As I say, when you look at a lot of, you know, we don't want to just bottle a standard 15-year-old distillery that everyone else can do. You know, you're going to get lost. What's that saying about your brand? You know, we all have to kind of develop a USP. And I think because we're not able to buy casks on a Monday and bottle them on a Wednesday, as we maybe could have done a few years ago, we have to think a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think wood's a big factor. Yeah, that's why we do a lot of re-racking. But I think variety is the big thing for independent bottlers. You're trying to. I'm sure everyone on the panel would agree. You have this ambition to bottle from as many different distilleries as you possibly can, and obviously your hands are tied to a certain extent. But then at the same time, you're looking at all the different types of wood, different ages. So it's every way you can drive variety with this kind of overarch of quality.
Yeah, I think that the difference here on this panel here, everyone's a whiskey geek, aren't we? We're all bloody passionate about, you know, we're here for the end game. We're not here to make a fuss.
Sometimes too much. Sometimes too much, I think. You know, sometimes we're not commercial enough and too geeky, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Ian actually always says that if he was to go on Dragon's Den, they would boot him out. They would tell him to leave.
Is that because of his entrance into the room or because of his business pitch?
I'll let you make your mind up with that one.
Yeah.
So something that I've had experience, and we're not an independent bottler here at the Oak Barrel, but we do bottle exclusive whiskies. You know, we've worked with distilleries direct, and we've worked with bottlers. Sometimes we put our own labels on it. Sometimes we just put a little logo and do that sort of thing. Now, in the past, when I started about 6 years ago, you buy in bulk and you get a discount on buying it because you're buying in bulk. Then it switched, and all of a sudden you're paying more than what the individual bottle cost would be for the privilege of putting your name on it. And now, by the time, and this has happened with, I think, 3 of the bottlers on this panel and with many others, that by the time the cask sample finds its way to Australia, maybe it takes a week air freighted, I'll try it. Maybe that takes a week to do it. By the time that 14 days has gone past and I send the email back, it's gone because someone else has do it. So I'm, you know, in a couple of cases, having to put trust into people who aren't part of my business to get those barrels. Is that something that you guys have as well? That or do you still get to try casks or do what you really want, or are you relying upon brokers and distillers and other people to go, look, honestly, you kind of want this because otherwise it's going to go?
I think if you're buying from brokers, there's more pressure because the offer's probably out there to everybody, and it's kind of a first come first serve situation. So you kind of need to go with your gut. If you like the distillery, if you like the age, and if you like the price, you're going to maybe take a punt on it. If you're lucky enough to have a relationship directly with any distillers, it's not, you know, you're going to get a bit of time to do the deal and the opportunity to sample some of the whiskies first. But it's a bit of a mixture. Buying from distilleries is without a doubt the holy grail. A much easier process, a much more straightforward process, and like I say, better access to information and samples, that type of thing.
And so just on that, for people who have no idea, and particularly Australian audiences who, I'm almost finished this Craig Gallagher. What is the percentage, like a Bacardi, selling all of these? You're buying off brokers. Is it 10% of whiskies on the market are sold by distilleries, or is it 50%?
I think less and less. I mean, I think we've all got relationships, maybe with one or two big distilleries. Dave will have a relationship, Boutique would have a relationship with most people and most of the big brokers. But really, it's changing so much. They don't need us. Look how the distillers have changed their whole profile. They're bottling them themselves these days. Diageo have got guys selling casks for £100,000 in Asia. The big distillers are doing things that they weren't doing 5 years ago. We were kind of parasites on their back, friendly parasites on their back. And then they realized, hey, we could have a little bit of this action as well. So the whole thing has changed. And that's why we have to, as I say, adapt. I think this thing about, I think that Ali said there, when we buy casks now, we are really not thinking about bottling this year, but we're thinking 3 or 4 years down the line, because in order to get the value proposition that we want, we can't let it out as it is. So certainly the big distillers, they're all flying at the moment. Look at the share price of all the big boys at the moment. They don't need to sell parcels of stock out there on the market as they did maybe 10 years ago when I started out. So I think distillers is a relatively small part. There's brokers there, I mean, old established brokers that have had stock for many, many years. They might give you a little bit, but we're all just trying to be canny. I don't know what there is no silver bullet to sourcing casks at the moment. We are whores. We will buy from whoever.
It's all about building those relationships with the distilleries, and certainly in the New World distilleries that we've been. It's about building those relationships. I mean, the distilleries that we approached in Australia, for example, none of them wanted to give us any rubbish. We were offered the best, which was bloody excellent. And from 2-year-old to 5-year-old, nothing was very aged, but it was all just stunningly good whiskey. So this was having those relationships with the New World distilleries is a great string to the boutique bow, that's for sure. But finding the old parcels of Scotch, it's getting harder and harder, isn't it? Those private collections of Macallan and Springbank, they've disappeared, or they're disappearing fast. A lot of our old Scotch was coming from private collectors, but they've all cashed in on that now and done very well out of it, I'm sure. But having those relationships with, say, the New World distilleries, the new Scotch distilleries, as well as some of the bigger boys who are, the distilleries that are really just there for fillings. Distilleries are still making fillings fillings for blended stock. People drink whiskey. Not everyone drinks whiskey around the world out of a Glencairn. So the majority of them still drink it out of a rocks tumbler or a highball glass. It's only geeks like us that, is it too early?
No.
I think relationships that was something I was going to mention as well. We're a young company, and Ian unfortunately didn't inherit any great grandfather rights in the industry. When he started North Star, it didn't come with 10 warehouses worth of old stock that was waiting for him. So everything, and I'm sure the guys here are all the same. Everything, all the relationships that you've built with supply have been built from the ground up. But I think Dave touched on an interesting point there, which was about new distilleries. There's been a lot of discussion around this recently, as new distilleries supporting independent bottlers, and there's some interesting points to be had around independent bottlers being able to showcase new distilleries. Although I have noticed, some newer ones may be hesitant to sell casks to independent bottlers, even though they may be independent bottlers themselves. So I think that's been quite an interesting discussion to follow, is who are supporting independent bottlers, and are we the best people to kind of showcase what they're making and the spirit that they're producing?
Well, I'm going to say, of course we are, because I think the way we do it, because we're quite snobby about what we bottle. So I would say, when you say about relationships, there's a trust there. I think if anyone deals with us, they know that they know that we're not going to sell it on the secondary market straight away, that we'll bottle it only when we feel it's good and ready. And we won't try and kind of play around with their brand kind of asset, so to speak. So yeah.
Like Eamon, I can also talk to this from my previous incarnation working for distilleries, because you were always asking me to get things like casks, and you could use the name Glendronach, and it was always a no. And stop
Exactly.
asking me.
And I've not forgotten now. Can I just say on record here?
So I can kind of see their point of it as well.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. But I mean, especially, I think we've shown them the way forward. You look at what the big boys bottling now, that they never ever were good. Distilleries that were only used for blending, or lots of different single casks. They weren't doing that.
Look at Mortlach. Look at Mortlach. You couldn't get Mortlach as an official bottling up until about 5 years ago, and it became this cult whiskey on the back of what independence had done with it.
Aye. Yeah, and the Bacardi distilleries as well, wasn't it? There was only Aberfeldy, wasn't there? There was no Macduff. There was no Craigellachie. And look how far they've gone. The last great malts, I think it was released as 2014, wasn't it? As they all came to market, Royal Brackford, Glendeveron, all came onto market there. They were all just fillings. And I remember when they were bringing them back and talking to the ambassador at the time, they were buying stock back. They had no age stock. They were buying stock back from the brokers, exactly the same people that we're buying the Altmores, we're buying it back, buying the old stock back for them to release, because they never had anything. It all went into blends.
I should touch on the Mortlach point again. Incidentally, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because Mortlach became successful because of independent bottlers. Diageo then brought it back in-house and won't sell it to any of us anymore.
It's an excellent segue into something I wanted to touch upon here, in that, okay, so the Scotch and those big names that independent bottlers have helped build are now pretty unobtainable for a fair price and that sort of thing. And Dave, what you were talking about, looking at new world distilleries and that sort of thing. North Star, you've done English whiskey as well, I'm pretty sure, and that sort of thing. And Matt Bailey, I haven't ignored your question, but it feeds into this as well. In the Australian industry, Australian whiskey, for example, and obviously Boutique's been the biggest player out of the people on this panel here recently. I can tell you that if we go back 5 years ago, when there was no whiskey on the markets, spirit price per litre was at a certain level. It's now at about a quarter, if not a tenth, of that price for spirit. And that's a small ecosystem going in the other way, because there was no supply, and now there's lots of supply. Are you guys, as independent bottlers, now looking to these new world places, like new Scottish distilleries, but also then beyond those to things like, Waterford in Ireland, and the like proliferation of things there, to places like England, to places like India and Taiwan and Australia? Are those places on your radar at the moment?
Oh, certainly on ours.
Yeah.
The new collection that we're coming out at the end of this month. I mean, our youngest spirit is 40 days old. An English distillery. And we've got a 12-year-old, so the oldest English whiskey we've released, a 12-year-old from the English Whiskey Company. But I love doing the traveling and doing the shows around the world, and then meeting a new distillery that you've never heard of before, and then tasting some of their stock and thinking, actually, this is bloody delicious. And then introducing Boutique and saying, how would you like to do something with us? That approach, what's really good is lots of people have heard about what we've been doing, and they see it as not as an inroad to a new market, because some of these distilleries are really quite small and they haven't got the stock to supply a global. But it is nice to be able to put. I think we did some Copper C. I mean, a little tiny distillery in New York State. We bottled some Copper C. Right, I went there, absolutely fell in love with the distillery, the people, the place. The whole outlook of the place is just stunning. And they were really up for it. Now, you can't buy that outside of New York State and maybe California in the States. And so to have this in a boutique bottle, the same with Copper Works in Seattle, they make absolutely stunning whiskey, but you just can't get it anywhere else. And to have it in a boutique bottle and put it in UK and Europe, I think is allowing those whiskey geeks, us who want to, it's always my always favorite expression is when someone asks me what's my favorite whiskey, I normally say it's usually the next one. Because it is, that's what my whole ethos was as a whiskey blogger. I come from a whiskey blogging background and whiskey discovery. It was always about the next whiskey discovery. So yeah, finding these new distilleries and giving them a market, but just an introduction so people will seek them out when they're traveling.
And quick one, Dave Denton did ask a question a little while ago, and I knew we were going to get onto this, so I didn't ask it straight away. But just a yes or no, Dave. He was he heard there was a Balcones bottling from Boutique in the past. He can't find it for love nor money. Will there be more Balcones in the future? Yes or no?
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. That's what we like to hear.
It's one coming up.
Yeah. Ali, if I may call you that, I didn't ask permission if I could call you that, but I heard someone else, so I'm just going to run and do it myself. Are you looking at sort of new world things, like take Australia, for example? Are you looking at, or is it just the tyranny of distance? You physically would have to come here and see these things before you dipped your toe into there?
Distance is definitely an issue, and it's not so much coming to actually visit the distiller. It's more once you decide you want to buy something and you have to get it back over to Scotland for bottling, suddenly you have these astronomical shipping charges. It's bad enough trying to get 10 casks from Glasgow up to Speyside. Never mind maybe one cask coming from Queensland over to Scotland. The other side of it, if I'm being perfectly honest, I know a lot of people in Scotland that are involved in whiskey, but I don't have those relationships outside of Scotland. I know one or two people maybe in Taiwan and India, but I just haven't really ventured into that area yet because I'm not confident that it's something that would kind of bear fruit for me. I'd love to do this sort of stuff that Dave's done because they've had a fantastic array of world whiskies, and I know that North Star have done some stuff certainly with English whiskey companies. I'd love to do it. I just don't know quite where to start with it, if I'm being honest. Yeah,
I mean, Eamon, you like we spoke about it before. We hinted at it. Rest and Be Thankful has been a little bit quiet in the past little while, and we're talking about trying to read the market and that sort of stuff in stepping back and building up those stocks and making sure that what you come back with is worthy of the RBT name. Are you looking wider afield or still to what you know?
Well, obviously, the pandemic's put a massive old stop to that. I mean, to do a Balcones or something like that, that would be my dream. There's so many distilleries that I'd love to be involved in. But it goes back to that point. One, the logistics that Ali said, but even, and the other guys will back me up on this, is that even to get them to Scotland, warehousing space is so short in Scotland at the moment. And you want to be able to put them in a place where you can taste them, where you can, revisit them, so to speak. I mean, warehousing is so tight at the moment. So again, to be able to manage that process all the way through is obviously, COVID is a weird time anyway. But warehousing is such an issue in Scotland right now. And like Alice was saying about getting hold of samples and when you're looking at buying casks, I mean, that's an issue. But even be able to manage that process, it's just a weird time. It's a weird time at the moment. I think there'll be a settling down over the next few years. And I think, as far as we're concerned, as I say, we've been laying down stock probably for the last 3 or 4 years, but we bought some older stock as well. because we realized we were losing control. There was too many independent bottlers coming into the market. There was too little stock. If you were going to have a USP, if you were going to be able to fight your little corner in a very busy market, you had to have something special to offer. And to me, that's all about being able to offer really good whiskies, but not at a silly price as well. I mean, one thing that we've been really getting into is rums. So we've been buying parcels of rums on the market, and we managed to acquire some really great rums from kind of 1996 to 2001. So the plan next year is we'll launch some of those rums. We've managed to acquire some nice casks as well, some older casks as well. So we'll kind of dip our toe in the market again in that respect. But going forward, the way that I see us is very much offering stock that we work with a distiller to lay down with wood that we acquired, that we manage that process and then bottle that in starting in 2 years' time, but at a reasonable price point, and also bigger volumes as well. This kind of stop-start that we've been guilty of, we have to have a more kind of considered approach going forward. And we're very fortunate in terms of when we've been able to take time because of our involvement in other projects in the Waterford and the Renegade. So that's our take on it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really interesting point because obviously Boutique's done a lot of rum. North Star have dealt with rum, but then also fortifieds and that sort of thing. I know another independent bottler who's not on here tonight. Adelphi, dealt with Armagnac, that sort of stuff as well. Matt Bailey, who runs, if you're not familiar, the Scotch Whisky Society in Australia, he's the front man for that. They've done Armagnacs and that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing I'm getting out of this is that the old buy and see a cask, sell a cask is sort of done, and you need to innovate, whether that's in re-racking or pushing out and finding, okay, if you're a fan of RBT or infrequent flyers or whatever it is, you like what I do, then you're also going to like what I do outside the scope of whiskey. I mean, Ali, are you looking outside whiskey at all, or?
I've got to be honest, Scott.
Don't say gin. Don't say gin.
No. I don't, personally, I'm not. I don't particularly like gin, but I have been offered some rum from brokers, and I'm pretty sure it's fantastic. But I'm scratching my head and saying I've no idea how much that should cost. Is that a good deal? It's probably not a good deal. So I'll pass. It's another thing. It's like the world whiskey stuff with rum. I don't know enough about it to really get right into it. It's maybe something for further down the road.
Yeah. I mean, but we're learning, guys, sorry but we're learning. Look at guys like Whiskey Sponge, Decadent Drinks and stuff like that are bottling Armagnacs. And, there's people coming onto the market who are doing relatively standard stuff. But then there's people coming onto the market that are teaching us as well. And I think that's the great thing at the moment. So many, I saw the woven drinks, woven whiskey, so many interesting things that make us think and what we should be doing in the future.
There's a lot of stuff happening. It's interesting you mentioned that, Eamon. There's so many new projects that are just cropping up over the last 2 or 3 years that would have been kind of unthinkable a decade ago. So cool.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting, and it's sort of what we've been touching upon as I pull into the North Star Chaos, which is exceptionally great value. Not a single cask, but it is. Can I say the distillery? I'm not sure. I think it was listed on the website.
Yeah, you can see the distillery.
Yeah, Kalala. At a great price that I wouldn't necessarily try from a official bottling from this distillery. With the price things going up, for me as a buyer, from a retail point of view, I always loved indie bottlers, but for the store it made sense because of the value I could pass on to the customer. Now that value is starting to potentially erode with the proliferation of people coming in, as we've discussed. So things like Chaos actually get the price down again. Is that something you guys consider? I know, Kira, you touched on it before. Like, is that something that it goes through your mind? And then also, how do you do that? How do you take a cask that's X amount and then sort of reevaluate that so it comes out, better than the sum of its parts to the drinker?
Well, the Chaos is a good example. We asked all of our markets, what do you want? And they wanted Islay, sherry matured, well priced, and the Chaos is, ticks all three boxes. I think it retails here for around or between £40 and £50. It's not a single cask, but it's usually a batting of three casks, and we like to involve some of our racking projects in it as well. So it's a fun little project for us to work on. We get to select 3 different casks to use within the bottling. But just going back to your question on price, and what we've all spoke about is, we're all geeks, and I think when we look at what we want to bottle and what we want to take to market, we think about what we want to enjoy and what we want to have. So there's been a couple of bottlings that we've done, and we've got the cask sample, and we've thought that's at North Star. We're going to bottle that. It's going to be part of our single cask range, and we're absolutely delighted with the quality of spirit. But actually, the price point just didn't really sit well with us. So there's been 2 in the last year or so that we've bottled, and have created great feedback and all that sort of stuff. But we've not made a penny out of. We've broken even. And this is what I'm going back to.
Very good point.
Between Ian getting kicked off of Dragon's Den, but as geeks, we want to be able to celebrate these things and enjoy them, and more importantly, we want our fan base and people that support North Star. We want them to be able to enjoy these casks as well. But we're very aware that the budget's a huge thing for a lot of whiskey drinkers, and we fully appreciate that, and we are that. We fall into that category. So there's been a few. The Longmorn is one of those examples of casks that we were able to bottle, and it's one of the best casks we've bottled. But I can openly say that we did not make a penny out of that bottling. So
and I would totally endorse that, Gavin. I think it's a really good point because we're doing things at the moment that don't make us any money to stay on the journey, so to speak.
But Eamon, I think when Cara was saying they didn't make any money, that was a deliberate decision. Whereas with you, I think it's probably accidental. Listen, don't forget, I've got my partner's a guy called Aidan Smith. Oh no,
every pound's a prisoner. Every pound's a prisoner.
Counts. But I think just going back to what we were saying at the start about new independent bottlers. I think if you have the same ethos as what people like us do, and it is all about the quality of spirit, and we are geeks. I think you have to have that in order to appreciate price point versus cask quality. I think your business has to be based around that. It's not just about sourcing the best cask you can find and making the same profit margins each time. Our business doesn't work like that. You have to really take each cask as it comes. And actually, Ian always says quite openly that finding the perfect cask is like chasing the sun. You might never get there, but you get to bask in the glory of good spirit all the.
Oh my goodness me!
That's very good.
Can we just so everyone, if you're
needs a podcast.
If you're watching on the stream or you're on the panel here, anything that is said here belongs to the Oak Barrel, including T-shirt slogans and anything. So
that's what it's all about for us, though. We like to see the people that drink North Star and open North Star. It's like a big family. We share that ethos with our importers, and that's another interesting point. Is the analog workings of the whiskey world. We sell to importers who then sell to wholesalers and then retailers, and there's so many people involved in our industry, and so many people get to benefit from that. And I think it's really important that we all we hold on to the way that the industry's always worked. It worked that way for the original whiskey barons, and I hope that new companies hold on to that ethos as well. It's not just about selling direct to to the consumer and reaping all the benefits from that. You know, our industry works so well because there's so many people involved in it, and that's a huge thing for us as well, is keeping that wheel spinning and keeping it very analog.
Yeah. I saw somewhere on social media, there was a discussion about that very thing a few weeks ago. About, you know, don't try and cut out all the folk in the middle. We always worked when I was at Benriach, we always said you could have the greatest product in the world, but see if you don't have a good importer or distributor, you'll never get anywhere. And vice versa, you can have a great importer, but if you've got a bad product, you're not going anywhere. So you needed the two things to be in sync. Importers are so important.
I think
you need passionate people.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point as well, in that, you know, there are ways to cut down the prices by cutting people out, and, you know, big, you know, bulk market retailers and that sort of thing, which makes it quite interesting. And, you know, like, obviously we're a retailer in the Sydney CBD, and that comes with its own challenges during times of lockdown and that sort of stuff. But it's been fascinating to hear about, like, you know, you guys cutting the margins and breaking even on casks just for the sake of the brand. I remember, you know, as a bright-eyed, you know, whiskey fan, basically, who ran tastings on the side of my journalism career 6 years ago when I studied, I thought oak barrel exclusives that would, you know, that they're going to make the year. They're going to be the genius ones. We'll make all the profit on them, charge whatever we want because no one else can sell it. And turns out you sell them for, you know, actually less margin than what you'd normally do. Because there's 30 grand of the stuff sitting out the back there and you'd sort of need to move that through. But also because you have an idea in mind about what that price point should be and what you or myself, what I would pay for that. And then you do the maths and it was like, well, actually, that's where it needs to be. So I think that leads into my sort of next question, that's a little bit more personal, is that we're all in this sort of the same sphere. We're all whiskey fans. They just happen to have the luck and to work in whiskey full time. And when you drink a bottle of, let's say, you know, Alistair, you mentioned Benriach right now, you know, say the latest cask strength, and you're sitting there drinking something that Rachel Barry, you know, blended. And it was a little bit different to what Billy Walker blended, you know, from the earlier batches. But there's a whole team that was sort of in that. When you drink an independently bottled whiskey, you sort of feel a little bit like you're sitting there having a dram with Ali or Eamon or Dave or Kira. And you know, I know that I certainly do it, and maybe because I am lucky enough to know people like yourselves. But the drinker of Rest to Be Thankful may not have met, you know, the team behind it, but they still know there is someone behind it. How much thought process do you guys put into that, knowing that it might not be tomorrow, it might not be in 6 months' time, it might be in 10 years' time when a bottle gets open, that they're going to have a drink of something that you chose and you put it. It's a very personal thing.
Oh, it's a deep question.
Certainly something.
Yeah,
it's certainly something that I believe in, you know, and I love to think that people are, you know, I spend a lot, you know, I live on social media. I live on Twitter. I always say Twitter's this little village just north of London in deepest mid-Bedfordshire, but I do live on social media, and I sort of, everything is on social media about boutique releases and my life, my baking, my falling over, all that nonsense. But you want the people who are drinking boutique to have it, you know. And if I'm having a drink, pick something from my cabinet. I quietly, you know, I'll open the door and say, okay, what am I drinking tonight, people? And they'll pick something, and then someone, I'm going to join you with that. So yeah, they are having that virtual. It's building those relationships with your drinkers as well as independent bottlers. You know, our customers are the best. You know, they've got to be the best because they're picking independently bottled whiskey. They've got to, you know, they're curious about whiskies.
Yeah, and what I'd say is we're spending our own money. You know, this is opportunity cost in terms of we've got families, and you know, it's a big emotional decision to spend however many thousands on a cask. And I certainly feel kind of a stupid emotional connection to anything we bottle. But similarly, anything else I drink as well. You know, I don't drink the distillery. I drink the guy I know there. You know, I drink it's so personal, this whole thing to me. I'm terribly, childish about it almost. But if the whiskey is great, but I went there and I didn't like that guy or had a bad experience, blow it. I'm not doing it. And I think the thing about us is that we manage that process from literally A to Z. So anyone that does that, they deserve, this is easy for us to say, but they deserve that you enjoy their product, because it's a bit like you, Scott. You had a nice job and you set up that business. It's not easy. So as I say, anyone that makes that investment, they absolutely deserve, it's a different relationship than somebody that was at Diageo or Bacardi. We used our own money to get this far. So it's quite a personal thing,
Yeah.
And I mean, most independent bottlers are quite small operations. So that the people behind the brand, if you like, have probably been quite involved in the select. I mean, with me, it is only one person. So, I sit in. We're just about to launch our latest batch today. But when I was picking those casks 4 or 5 months ago, you agonise over your choices because you sit and go, oh, this one or this one or this one or this one. Is this one from distillery X slightly better than the next cask along? So you do lose sleep over it. So everything that you bottle, you've put a lot of thought into it, and it's always something that you are happy with. You'll never ever put anything out you're not happy with. That just has to go back back into the warehouse. So you've got to have that, and that, I think, that builds that trust with your consumer, that they're happy if they see it, whether it's North Star or Boutique or RBT, they'll trust the brand, sort of thing.
Yeah, you're only as good as your last release, aren't you? As an indie.
Completely.
As soon as you've lost your. I had a little episode of COVID earlier, and I was doing a tasting on Zoom, and I completely lost my palate, and I lost sense of taste and smell, and I don't remember how it happened. I know I shouldn't have been doing the tasting because I was in a bit of a fever at the time, but I'd already promised this thing, and things were rapidly going downhill, and I wanted to shut this tasting down very quickly, but I couldn't taste and smell anything, I couldn't tell the difference between a 12-year-old Tobermory and a 12-year-old La Chick, sister cask. Which one's which? And I had a 44-year-old Glen Tockers, couldn't taste a thing, and I just winging it all the way through, and I've got to shut this tasting down pretty quickly. But yeah, if you put, as an indie, you put something bad in a bottle, people will remember you forever. They might not like what you put in a bottle because it's a little bit too out there for them. We put some Copper Sea, it divides. It is 100% floor malted rye, direct fired stills, rye whiskey. It's whiskey that would old style rye whiskey, and it divides. The geeks love it because it's, wow, this is really interesting. But the people who've had other ryes or not into rye, not quite sure. It's a bit too farmyardy for me, sort of thing. But it's not rubbish. If you put rubbish in, everyone will remember you forever, and that's why the taste test as an independent bottler is why you sit there worrying about it while we have. We sit there tasting samples and deciding which order we're going to put in. Are we going to blend? Are we going to put these together? Should we blend these two casks together? Will it be better? Let's try it and do little samples and bigger samples. And okay, yeah, that's the one we go for. And you all do it. You live and breathe your brands. Yeah, you put something rubbish in, you'll be remembered forever. So
a brand is nothing without the people that support it, really. And to have people choose your product and want to open it and enjoy it, that's a pretty special experience. But once it gets to that point, the spirit's got to do the talking. And if you've got a good reputation, it's almost harder because, as you guys said, the next bottling needs to be better than the last.
Yeah.
Very true.
Look, we've hit the hour mark, which is what I asked you all for, but I'm going to hold you on for a little bit longer, just to say thank you so much for tonight. Like, it's fascinating, and we could keep going all night, and because it is night where I am, and you guys have actual work to do in and around the rest of the day. But I want to say thank you for what you've done in the past and and what you're doing in the future, but also just for being part of this journey with all of us whiskey drinkers who love it, and donating your time this morning to sort of give us an insight into what it is, because we can call up an Australian distiller, find out what's going. There's people here that we can sort of get some stuff from brand ambassadors, but for Scottish distilleries, but for the indie guys and what's happening in the trends and what's happening next and what the challenges are, that's a bit of a dark art. So we don't always see behind that because we're not over there, and literally we've been banned legally from going over there in the past 18 months or so. Before I go, I want to give everyone a quick chance to just sort of say where you're at, what's coming new, anything you want to do a plug, because I know it hasn't really been able to have too many chances to plug anything new tonight. So I might start, Dave, because I know there's some stuff coming from you. I might give you the floor very quickly. Boutique in the next 6 months, and I know there's some stuff coming to Australia soon, but like what can we expect?
Okay, well, at the end of this month, we've got our Home Nation series, which is a collection of mostly English distilleries. We've got some really new distilleries from Circumstance. We've got another single grain from Oxford. And we've got a first ever Adnams, a lot of new labels. And later on this year, we've got we've got for Christmas, we've got a wine cask series. It's a secret, but I've just told you. And I'm just looking at what we've got coming through there, as well as that Balcones. We've got some incredible blended scotches. And I'm just going to shout some numbers out: 22, 32, 42, and 52.
Well,
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just from the Australian point of view, there should be some stuff landing in September by the latest things. When I say September, assume add 8 weeks onto that with current delays. But September, we should see some new boutique stuff landing in the country. Alistair, I'm going to throw to you next, because I just got word from your importer in Australia that things should be landing, and I should see some. What is your previous series?
In
1st of September. But what's happening with you at the moment?
So that sounds like
I can tell you exactly what was in it.
I'm trying to remember which batch we're on. You kind of lose track. I think that's batch 6. I think that's batch
I was
6.
thinking
It's
6
got
now.
some Glenkeith Milton stuff. Ben Nevis. So that's the one we've just done about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. Literally today, we're on batch 7 release, which all information is going out today. It's on the table somewhere behind me. So I can't say too much about it yet. It'll probably, where are we? August. So that's probably going to hit Australia towards the end of the year. Although I have to say, it's taken almost as long to get products into Germany and Holland at the moment as it is to Australia. Thank you, Brexit. The gift that keeps on giving. So yeah, that's the next one. We'll do one more before the end of the year, around September bottling, but that'll be sometime early next year when you see that one.
Excellent, very very exciting. Eamon, I'm going to throw to you because I don't have absolutely no idea what you're doing. But as in your company in general, you've been working with Waterford.
Yes. So we're investors in Waterford because I was involved with Bruichladdich, and then so when I knew that Mark Rainier was involved in the Waterford project, I kind of wanted to get involved, and we managed that commercially. So Waterford, it's all taking the concept of terroir, traceability, transparency to kind of incredible levels. Fantastic project. We've done the same in the Grenada, so with the Renegade Rum Distillery there, which we've had all kinds of issues with building a distillery from scratch. We're launching the first kind of, what would you call it, pre-cask. I think it's effectively like Claret rum straight off the still. So we're launching that this autumn. But that's really taken, during lockdown, that's taken a lot of my focus. But then the other thing I've really been doing, as I say, is laying down stocks I work with Inchterny Distillery, a guy called Ian Palmer, who I knew from my days at White & Mackay, production director, really great guy. So I've been laying down stock there that I can use in the future. buying casks as and when, and then, as I say, getting into rum. And it's, as Ali said, it's new ground for us. And when I first started on the rum, I didn't even really know what I was tasting. So I was bringing in all kinds of people. But so next year, we'll launch Rest and Be Thankful again with whiskies and rums, and then working on those other. So kind of busy times. But all I really want to do is get back to looking after my own babies, if you will, Rest and Be Thankful, because that's where I have the most pleasure, and that's where I can control things as well.
Yeah, awesome. I think I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but Waterford might have a deal in the pipeline for Australia.
Exactly, I think with Dan's.
Yeah, quite a big deal. So you may not see it through the Oak Barrel and other indies straight away, but certainly fantastic Irish whiskey you will see in the market eventually. So awesome. Thank you very much. And then I'll throw to Kira, who, for those playing in Australia, I can see them. They're just over there. There's a couple of boxes of North Star from the previous release of things, which, let's be honest, with this going on, I won't have a chance to look at for a couple of weeks. Not that I'm doing anything busy. I'm just sitting on the phone with couriers asking where parcels for various virtual tastings are going. But Kira, like North Star, obviously that was your previous one. What's coming up? Where were you at?
Yeah, so that was series 14. And since then, we have bottled 15 and 16. 15 was predominantly made up of mainly exclusives. So that was a fairly small release, which is why we decided to bottle and ship 16 at the same time. So it should be leaving here to you guys in the next 3 weeks, I want to say. So you might get it before Christmas.
Yeah. And just on a completely unrelated note, between yourself, Kira, and Ian at North Star, I would trust whatever you guys chose as an excellent cask. Mentioning that maybe Series 15 was a bunch of exclusives before Christmas. Maybe read between the lines there, people of Australia. And shout out to Scotty from Wonderland Drinks, who's
there's some really fun bottlings in both 15 and 16. Things that we have maybe not bottled before. And there's a new brand being launched in Series 14, which is with you now, a new brand of blended malt, which was a super fun project for Ian, kind of combining his love for whiskey and music. So that should be with you now. I think you'll enjoy that. But yeah, some really fun bottlings, and yeah, a lot to be working on over the next few months. So
Cara, can I ask you a question? What about the rum? The rum that you did with the musicians? I mean, that was amazing. What's that about?
Yeah, so again, Ian, we collaborated with the Cuban brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so again, just a kind of fun project for us to work on. And over the last year as well, obviously the music industry has been impacted pretty much worse than anyone. So it was we wanted to kind of help that industry and give back, so that I kind of
collaborated. No, that was amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, not much more to say on that, I guess. Apart from it was fun. It was fun. Rum's definitely not our speciality. I think whiskey takes up enough of our time at this stage.
I think we might need to do, and I think I've got some rum in the current batch that has arrived this morning that I may not get a chance to look at, so I apologise to people who are looking for that. But maybe we just need a virtual tasting where Ian and Kira just DJ live. No talking.
I'd do that.
Yeah. Since I'm on here as well, maybe I get to plug my little set that we were working on. This is a fun little box. This is part of your next... this should be part of Series 14. So it was a fun little project that we worked on. So nice little box, 3 20 CLs from
nice.
Distilleries, Atho, a Linkwood and a Kalula. So yeah, that was a fun little project that we worked on that Ian kind of let me take hold on. So yeah, that. I think he's got a tasting with you guys in the next few weeks as well.
Not with us. I think he's got the Elysian, a great bottle bar down in Victoria, which unfortunately they've anything we can do, they can do better, Victoria. So they've decided to go full lockdown and curfew as well. So big shout out to Whisky and Almond, listen, everyone down there. But look, everyone, thank you so much for donating your time in the morning. I know your phone's probably got 700 messages and emails. I do want to just bring up a comment from Christian Fernandez. I don't know if he's still here, that he said that sort of sums up what I was going to say at the end anyway. It's like, really appreciate the insight and putting faces to the brands. And that's so important, because what I was touching upon before, when I drink a bottle of any of your brands, I kind of feel like I'm sitting next to you having that chat. And if I'm not, like, I know that you had a chat with someone else to decide what went into this. And so it makes so much more interesting following your brands. Think honesty and lack of marketing jargon and BS. I think that means bullshit, which we're not afraid to swear on the stream. So, and that's 100%, because you will not get the bullshit from the independent bottlers. And I do really appreciate that. Peter Bignell from the Belgrave Distillery down in Tassie, who is, I think, the first ever indie bottling was with Boutique, was with Dave. Thanks for inspiring our need to contact a couple of indie bottlers. So, so if everyone can just hold up a business card on the camera right now. Look, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We will be back tomorrow night. We're going to get a little bit weird with Barrel with 2 L's whiskey tomorrow night, with some bizarre, technically American whiskey, but most of it's not confining to bourbon or rye. And for those playing at home, I haven't sent an email about it, but I did put it up tonight. If you didn't guess already, our Friday night finale next week is Sullivan's Cove, and we've been working on a release with them for about 7 years. Was our last exclusive with the Oak Barrel, and we weren't going to do anything for the sake of doing it, and we've found something that we think is very, very special. There's no information on the tasting that I've just put up, because as far as I know, it's still being labelled as of 2 hours ago. So we'll announce that on the night, but something very, very cool. But I'll send an email to them. If you're watching, go and check it out now. You got the heads up. Thank you, everyone. We will be back tomorrow night for night 3 of Forum. And to the 4 of you panelists, hopefully we'll see you back here next year. Maybe in the flesh, probably not. We'll do it via Zoom again.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks so much, Scott.
Scotty.
Thanks,
Lovely to
guys.
see you all.
Thanks all. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.